This video is not only about us, but about everyone being fearless and hitting the Sierras in one of the most terrible and dangerous conditions. Hiking the PCT from Mexico to Canada, there was no way of flipping up north and doing the Sierras 2 months later. Depending on the snowfall of the last winter, conditions vary from year to year. In 2019, the snow will probably last until the end of July, which makes the crossing of passes almost impossible after 9 a.m. But this is not the only problem you have to deal with in this year. With the melting snow, the rivers will be bigger and stronger and frighten your life. Hitting the Sierras in the early season, it's like climbing Mount Everest. You have to pick the right window. If you go too early, the snowstorms will kick you off the mountain. If you go too late, the rivers will just take you away. Most people flipped up north and will attend the Sierras in September when there is no snow and the rivers are just a trickle.
So we just crossed Forester Pass, and if you go to the Sierras, you need some extra equipment. So definitely essential is the bear canister, the ice axe, and your micro spikes. So my micro spikes, I got them last year in Nepal. I never tried them in any mountains. They have never touched the snow, and they last me maybe a few hours until the metal just broke, and then also the plastic broke. So we are in the middle of nowhere. There's no way of getting new micro spikes. So what I did is that I used a carabiner to combine it again, and then normally I would ask people for the little things you close the tortilla bags with to just connect those ones again. So you have to be creative if you go to the Sierras.
Leaving Kennedy Meadows at mile marker 702 and going up into the Sierras, we almost doubled our weight. Not only because of the extra equipment, but mostly because of the extra food. There are many options where you can hike out and resupply, but our plan was to stay in the wilderness and go all the way from Kennedy Meadows to Mammoth, which is 200 miles. We ended up taking 8 days worth of food containing round about 25,000 calories. Hiking up and down snowy mountains and crossing rivers, you will burn way more calories and move way slower than in the desert. We didn't really know how many days it would take, but there was always the option to just bail out. Most days we would start hiking at 4 a.m. and we wouldn't stop until 7 p.m. Depending on the terrain and the conditions, we would make between 15 to 22 miles. At the end, it took us 12 days to go all the way from Kennedy Meadows to Mammoth. Getting into Mammoth, our bodies were just burned. Every muscle just felt like butter. Hiking the Sierras has been the biggest physical and mental challenge of our lives. There are several passes to conquer and hundreds of creeks and rivers to cross. Many people attending passes after 9 a.m. would slip on the slushy snow and take a fall of several feet. That's when the ice axe comes into play if you haven't lost it along the way. In most cases, people would end up with minor scratches and bruises, but others have already died this year. But the real danger lies in the river crossings. Sometimes you will be lucky and there will be a bridge or at least a log. But most times you have to fight against the current on slippery stones. Water levels vary from your ankles until your hip, and I tell you, it's no fun to be in this ice-cold water. Our pants would be dry after a minute, but our shoes would be wet all day long. The only thing what helped were our waterproof socks. They wouldn't be waterproof, but they kept our toes kind of warm. Next time I would definitely take some toe warmers. But cold toes are nothing to complain about compared to the experience of other people who lost their balance, dipped into the water, feet up, were just holding on a small branch and fighting for their lives. Being back from the Sierras, it seems to be so easy, but the whole trip was totally brutal and exhausting. But in this whole misery of freezing temperatures and fearful moments, we got some good surprises. Just after the first pass, which is Forester Pass on 13,200 feet, there was some trail magic in the middle of the woods.
Food, huh?
Yeah, trail magic.
Trail magic in the middle of nowhere.
I'm getting really low on food. I think I had enough to last today.
Yeah.
Hey guys! Oh, look at you! What's up? So, food gets delivered.
I know. It's magic. It's exactly what they call it. Oh, I'm being called.
And what do you think about that?
What's up?
This is just like the last thing I ever expected to find in the woods. I just don't even know how they got all this stuff in here.
I know, it's so crazy, right?
It's really insane. I'm in disbelief.
There was a group of 6 people hiking in 14 miles, giving free food to hikers. There was not only a tortilla station with Nutella, jam and peanut butter, they also cooked some pasta bolognese, and later on we had some hot tortillas with big slices of sausage and cheese and some whiskey. It was just unbelievable and everyone was super happy. The next day they even woke up at 3 a.m., started the bonfire and delivered hot breakfast to our tents. After that we were ready to conquer the next and hardest pass, Glen. At the time we got there it was already 9 a.m. and the snow had started melting. It took all our concentration taking the next step. Just before the top it got so steep that I had to use my ice axe to pull myself up. But the hardest part was getting down again. The snow was between being frozen and safe steps and being slushy and just slide down. It took so much energy taking the next step that my muscles started shivering. Even after 5 days, I still had problems hopping down the smallest stones. Being in the Sierras with these conditions, you will be thankful for the smallest things. When I got to the top of Pincho Pass, I heard this music, and a moment later I spotted Mama G playing her guitar and singing the song West Virginia for me. She almost made me cry. This has been and probably will be the best moment of the PCT. There are not a lot of people in the Sierras, but you will never be alone. And no one gets left behind. If you get to a river crossing and you can't do it by yourself, you don't wait for more than an hour and someone will take you over. The closer you get to the Sierras, the more rumors you will hear about them. But those people talking have never been there. And don't waste any time looking up guthook comments. Those people have probably been there in totally different conditions and every comment is subjective. The Mother Pass, supposed to be the hardest one, just turned out to be one of the easiest climbs. But of course, it all depends on the time you attend it. When you make your decision about going through the Sierras, keep in mind that you can always turn around or just bail out. It's totally exhausting and dangerous, but at the same time beautiful and majestic, so it's worth doing it. After the passes Forester, Glen, Pincho and Mother, the passes were just rolling hills. So the further you go, the easier it gets. Most of the trail will be under snow, but as soon as you go under 9,000 feet, you can make some mileage. And the Sierras are definitely an up and down, taking all your calories. With the lower elevation, we had to cross bigger and stronger rivers. There were still 2 major river crossings in front of us. One would be Bear Creek and the other one Evolution River. When we got to Bear Creek, it was already 2 p.m. and we had planned to just camp and cross it the next morning. But there were some people who crossed it just an hour earlier. So we decided to just try it. We stored all our electronics in the bear canisters on top of our backpacks and figured out a strategy. We would be in one line facing upstream, me in the front with my hiking poles blocking the water, and my partner behind me holding on my backpack but at the same time pushing me against the current. It was a super hard crossing, not only because of the current, but also because of big, slippery stones. Compared to Bear Creek, the crossing at Evolution Meadow was just easy peasy. We did a good job until we were halfway through Bear Creek. But then the current got stronger and I couldn't move anymore. But at the same time, my whole body was under tension, fighting against the current. So I was constantly losing energy, and the only thing I could think of was don't panic. I was more than grateful being supported by my partner and not losing my mind. If you ever attend Bear Creek, don't do it alone and do it in the early morning. And for any other river crossing, walk up and downstream and look for an easier way to cross. The Sierras are difficult, but you can still do it. Thanks to everyone watching this video, and I wish everyone attending the Sierras a wonderful, safe and fun trip.